You're watching live from New Delhi. This is DD India Live, India's voice to the world, and I'm Sakal Bhatt. This Sunday coming up in the next 30 minutes. Headlines first. World leaders denounce Iran's strikes on Israel. India urges immediate de-escalation and calls for diplomacy. India's ruling dispensation, the BJP, releases its election manifesto for parliamentary polls, promises one nation, one election and uniform civil code, among others. And in tennis news, Casper Ruud to take on Tsitsipas in a bid to secure biggest title of the year on Sunday in France. World leaders have denounced Iran's strikes against Israel on Saturday. In a post on X, US President Joe Biden has reaffirmed his country's ironclad support to Israel against threats from Iran and its proxies. European Union and its members countries like Spain, Denmark, France, Netherlands and Norway have also condemned the attack. European Union's top diplomat Joseph Borrell has termed this attack as an unprecedented escalation. Canadian Prime Minister also supported Israel's right to defend itself and its people from these attacks. And immediately after the strike, US President Joe Biden has condemned Iranian attacks on military facilities in Israel, pledged a coordinated G7 diplomatic response and said the United States had helped Israel take down nearly all of the attacking drones and missiles. Joe Biden, who cut short a trip to Delaware and returned to Washington earlier on Saturday to meet with advisors about the attack, said that U.S. forces and facilities had not been hit. The president said he reiterated the ironclad U.S. support for Israel's security in a call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom he has had strained relations over Israel's handling of the war in Gaza. Meanwhile, India's Ministry of External Affairs has reacted to the tensions that have prevailed after Israeli defense authorities confirmed several drones and missiles launched at it late Saturday. The MEA on Sunday, the Indian MEA on Sunday, stated that the hostilities between Israel and Iran threaten the peace and security in the region. Hence, it calls for an immediate de-escalation, exercise of restraint, stepping back from violence. India has urged both countries to return to the path of diplomacy. The Indian MEA says it is closely monitoring the evolving situation, adding that its embassies in the region are in close touch with Indian community. United Nations Security Council is set to meet on Sunday after Israel requested the council condemned Iran's attack on Israel and designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization. The meeting will take place at 2000 GMT. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, requested the council hold an emergency meeting in a letter on Saturday to the council's president. Iran launched a swarm of explosive drones and fired missiles at Israel's late on Saturday in its first ever direct attack on Israeli territory, risking a major escalation. Now, my colleague from Tel Aviv joining us live, Cader, is joining us to bring us up to speed with the latest development. Hi, Alex. How do you do this afternoon out there? It's quite breezy, but quickly just to get to put things in perspective, upping the ante, Israel has claimed 99% of the almost 300 missiles and drones have been shot down. What are you hearing from the Israeli military side? What is the situation on ground there as we speak?
Well, it's certainly a big question. We know the Israeli War Cabinet is meeting now, and that will be a very big part of what the response will be. The decision that they make will determine the course of action for the next few weeks. We've had warnings from Iran, despite having just fired more than 300 drones and missiles at Israel. They say if Israel responds, there will be a heavier and regrettable response from Iran. And that escalation is the real fear, that this region could turn into a potential powder keg. We know that President Biden has said that the US would not support Israel in a further retaliation, really urging de-escalation where possible, similar to what we just heard from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs as well. Now, we've heard it from a spokesperson for the foreign ministry here in Israel. They want to see diplomatic pressure. That's clearly coming through in the messaging, urging the international community to label the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. There's a lot of pressure for some kind of diplomatic retaliation, which could reduce the chances of Israeli military retaliation. And that will be the big question, certainly in the next few hours. We know the UN Security Council, the G7, are all meeting today as well, of course, as the Israeli War Cabinet.
Okay, and Iran has warned of further attacks amidst all the pressure that is coming in terms of condemnation across the world. And if Israel retaliates, we don't know. So what's your assessment? What seems to be the Israel's future strategy? Are they in a more of a combative mode, or they intend to contain the situation?
Well, you have to ask yourself the question how, and this is the argument made by Israeli officials behind the scenes to our viewers in India and across the world. If a country had sent 185 drones, 36 cruise missiles and 110 ballistic missiles into your country, the Israeli argument is, how would you want your military to respond? And that is really some of the feelings that we have from Israeli officials, a desire to have some form of retaliation. But the crucial thing for our viewers to look at in the next few hours is whether or not that response comes against Iran directly or against Iran's proxies in Hezbollah, in Hamas, in the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Strikes against those groups have not been uncommon. We know that just in the last few hours, the Israeli Air Force has struck deep into Lebanese territory, targeting a Hezbollah munitions production facility. So there is some action going on there. A retaliation against the proxy groups could avoid or could create a path to non-escalation. That will be the big question, but it's clear a retaliation against Iran directly would have consequences.
Okay, so next, say around 72 hours or 48 hours are hugely crucial to understand where is this really heading to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we'll have to monitor it very closely. We'll have to see what the Israeli War Cabinet decides in the next few minutes, if not in the next hour. Once that decision is made, we may not see the action immediately, but if it is action against the proxy groups, there is a chance that this will not escalate into a further war, but a strike against Iran directly, and this is what Israel's allies and global powers have warned Israel against doing, could see an escalation between two nuclear-capable countries in the Middle East. That would have enormous consequences around the world. So certainly the next 24 hours, incredibly crucial to see if this conflict escalates.
As of now, many thanks, Alex, for joining us live from Tel Aviv. We'll, of course, touch base with you later in our shows as well. And quickly, let's switch over to Washington, D.C. Joining us from there, my colleague Nick Harper. I believe he's there with us. Can we quickly go across to Nick and get a perspective as far as Biden administration is concerned? Nick, hi. So there is this talk of this quote-unquote diplomatic response by G7 combined, and Joe Biden using words like ironclad response, quote-unquote, a strongly worded response coming by the Biden administration. So what seems to be the strategy here as far as US's support to Israel is concerned? Are they hinting at escalation or de-escalation?
Well, the United States, Sakal, certainly does not want this situation to escalate. It does not want to be pulled into a wider regional conflict. And that's why we've seen this statement from the US president pledging that support, saying that the US has the ironclad commitment that it will continue to support Israel's security, but not suggesting that it will be involved in any retaliatory strikes. It also, in that statement, the US president pointing out that Israel had demonstrated a remarkable capacity to defend against and defeat even unprecedented attacks. The president also saying that US forces and facilities in the region had not been targeted by Iran, but that the US would continue to monitor and it would not hesitate to take all necessary action to protect the US people. But obviously that is a situation that the US president does not want to find himself in. And that's why we'll see him later today meeting with the other members of the G7 countries, really trying to create a united front of condemnation for Iran, but also working out how to deal with the situation in a non-military way. We're told that they will coordinate a united diplomatic response. So that is suggesting that it will be a response that involves containment. We could potentially see a sanctions package being suggested by the 7 countries. And then later on today in New York, the UN Security Council will be meeting, and we're likely to see again more condemnation coming from the 15 members of the council there.
So do you see that really putting a lot of pressure on Iran, Nick, since you've been tracking the story very closely, the pressure of de-escalations, particularly on Iran?
Well, the United States, we are told, in that phone call late Saturday night US time, that phone call between US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, we're told that Joe Biden urged his Israeli counterpart not to retaliate, essentially to take this as a win, that Israel had been able to defend itself and therefore a retaliation and extra airstrikes were not required. We're also told that the US President made it clear to the Prime Minister that the US would not be involved in any retaliatory strikes. The President really does not want to be dragged further into this in a way that we could see this escalate and inflame tensions even further in the wider region, although we've already seen from a US perspective plenty of criticism overnight from Republicans urging the Democratic president to take a very forceful and military response. The president trying to urge calm. Obviously, as we heard from Alex just a few moments ago, we'll have to wait and see how exactly Israel decides to respond in the coming hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick, for joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you for those inputs. And now moving on to some more news and updates. Hamas has rejected an Israeli ceasefire proposal, saying it had handed to mediators in Egypt and Qatar its response to the proposal it had received last Monday. And after more than 6 months of conflict with Israel in Gaza, the negotiations remain deadlocked, with Hamas sticking to its demands that any agreement must end the conflict. Israel wants to secure the return of hostages seized by Hamas in its October 7 attack that triggered the conflict, but says it will not stop fighting until Hamas is destroyed as a military force. It also says it still plans to carry out an assault on the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Hamas has said it was ready to conclude a prisoners for hostages swap deal with Israel that would see the release of 133 hostages still believed to be held in Gaza in return for hundreds of Palestinians jailed in Israel. There was no official Israeli comment on Hamas's response. And still to come up on this edition of DD India Live, coming up next. Ukraine's army chief says Eastern Front under intense Russian assault. Donald Trump attacks judge and prosecutors in his hush money case in last rally before trial. And since the Sudan conflict erupted, over 1.7 million people have fled the country.
We are joined by India's ace shooter Rudransh Patil, who in a short span of time has won multiple medals at the international level.
Back to all of these matches have been very memorable to me. I cherish those matches a lot because all of these matches, not only I played them for the first time, but I was able to win over there.
You earned the quota for the country in 10-meter air rifle. What a great achievement at such a young age.
It was quite a very unique experience for me, which was coming with World Championship. I think so. The first thing which I was very proud was that I made India great over there and I could bring the quota.
Tracking the first phase of general elections, Team Poll Pulse has reached India's northeast in Assam. This is the tea city of India, Dibrugarh.
They are
not getting jobs in the local area like in Dibrugarh or nearby districts and all.
Home to the finest tea, the state is set for a cracker of a contest. This is 2024. Can the Congress and allies offer a fight back, or will the Modi juggernaut be unstoppable? Watch Poll Pulse on DT India.
You're watching DT India Live. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Amir Sarfaraz, the man responsible for the Indian national Sarabjit Singh's murder in Pakistan jail, was shot dead by unknown men in Lahore. Amir Sarfaraz, alias Tamba, a Pakistani underworld don, was convicted in a jail for the murder of Indian prisoner Sarabjit Singh way back in 2013. We'll try and get you more inputs on that story with my colleague Amritpal, who's going to join us in a bit to give us more details about this important news break of Amir Sarfaraz, the man responsible for the Indian national Sarabjit Singh's murder in Pakistan jail. In fact, as some reports suggest, he was shot down by unknown men in Lahore. Amir Sarfaraz, who is also known by the name Tamba, alias Tamba, is reportedly a Pakistani underworld don, and that's the picture that you see on your screen. Was convicted in jail for the murder of Indian prisoner Sarabjit Singh in 2013. We'll try and get you some more inputs as and when we can get in touch with Amritpal. Meanwhile, we can move on to other stories as well. And now let's get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. With its main focus on upliftment of women, youth, farmers and the poor, India's ruling dispensation, the Bharatiya Janata Party, released its election manifesto for 2024 Lok Sabha polls in national capital New Delhi on Sunday. Along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, BJP President JP Nadda, Union Ministers Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh, Nirmala Sitharaman and Dr. S. Jaishankar were also present at the event. At the release of the BJP Manifesto, Prime Minister Modi also met a few beneficiaries of the central government schemes and handed a copy of the manifesto. BJP's manifesto promises bringing all citizens above 70 years of age under the ambit of Ayushman Bharat scheme, implement the Uniform Civil Code, One Nation, One Election, among other things. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said the manifesto focuses on the dignity and quality of life.
हमारा फोकस डिग्निटी ऑफ लाइफ उस पर है, हमारा फोकस क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ उस पर है, हमारा फोकस निवेश से नौकरी पर भी है। इस संकल्प पत्र में क्वांटिटी ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज और क्वालिटी ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज दोनों पर बहुत जोर दिया गया है।
Mr. Modi said the entire country waits for the BJP's manifesto, and there is a big reason behind it, as in the last 10 years, the BJP has implemented every point of its manifesto as a guarantee on the ground.
पूरे देश को भाजपा के संकल्प पत्र का बहुत इंतजार रहता है, और इसका एक बड़ा कारण है। 10 वर्षों में भाजपा ने अपने संकल्प पत्र के हर बिंदु को गारंटी के रूप में जमीन पर उतारा है। भाजपा ने मैनिफेस्टो की सूचिता को फिर स्थापित किया है। ये संकल्प पत्र विकसित भारत के 4 मजबूत स्तंभ, युवा शक्ति, नारी शक्ति, गरीब, किसान, इन सभी को सशक्त करता है।
Bahujan Samaj Party Chief Mayawati addressed a public meeting in Muzaffarnagar district of Uttar Pradesh. She said that BSP never let any riots happen in western UP. She added that there had been no communal riots under the leadership of the Bahujan Samaj Party. The party took good care of not letting any community feel neglected and created a brotherhood amongst different communities. In other news, Russia on Saturday took control of a Ukrainian town in Donetsk area and pushed back the attacks of the Ukrainian army. On the same day, Ukraine attacked Russian command posts and other military targets. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that the Russian forces hit targets including Ukrainian artillery systems and electronic warfare base stations. Russian air defense systems also intercepted a number of Ukrainian rockets, aerial bombs and drones. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported on the same day that Ukrainian army carried out dozens of battles with the Russian army on the front line, hitting Russian command posts, drone control base stations, air defense missile systems and other targets. Some news from Germany, continuing with some news from Ukraine, I beg your pardon. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday has said that Germany will supply a US-made Patriot air defense system and air defense missiles to Ukraine. The announcement comes at a critical time as Kyiv struggles to defend its energy system from Russian bombardment. In his nightly video address, Zelensky indicated that talks were underway about expanding German transfers of another air defense system. German officials, however, have not referenced this in their remarks. Russia has staged 3 massive airstrikes on power stations and substations in recent weeks, prompting Kyiv to issue appeals for supplies of high-end air defenses. Former US President Donald Trump told his supporters during a rally on Saturday to have a good time watching his upcoming trial in New York on Monday. The Republican presidential candidate said a gag order imposed on him meant to take away his constitutional right to talk. Justice Juan Merchan, who is overseeing the trial, imposed a gag order on Trump in March and extended the order on 1st of April at prosecutors' request. The order blocks Trump from speaking about witnesses concerning their participation in the case. Prosecutors have accused Trump of falsifying business records to hide whopping $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election to buy her silence about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump.
See, 2 days from now, the entire world will witness the commencement of the very first Biden trial. They're all Biden trials, you know that, right? And I'm proud to do it for you. Have a good time watching. Have a good time watching. On Monday in New York City, I will be forced to sit fully gagged. I'm not allowed to talk. Can you believe it? They want to take away my constitutional right to talk.
Shifting focus to Sudan conflict, where the United Nations says more than 1.7 million people have now fled Sudan due to the conflict there. Many are now in South Sudan, Egypt and Chad and Ethiopia, where they are in desperate need of humanitarian aid. DD India's Patrick Oeth reports from South Sudan's capital, Juba.
Fighting between Sudan Armed Forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces is continuing in Sudan. Every day, more Sudanese people are crossing into other countries fleeing violence at home. The East African regional body, known as Intergovernmental Authority on Development, says the only way out of the conflict is through a negotiated settlement.
We hope, as IGAD, that also we are working on that issue to solve that problem so that the region is at last peaceful and could concentrate instead of solving conflicts, solving their economic development, building infrastructure, building peace, and working also together for an economic integration of the region.
IGAD has appointed a South Sudanese lawyer to head the mediation team for the Sudan process. One South Sudanese political analyst says South Sudan is in a better position to head the search for peace for Sudan.
IGAD need to make use of this position of a stalemate as a way of bringing the parties together so that there is going to be an aspect of resolving this problem. Or else, if there is not going to be that possible, then there is possibility of a long civil war that is going to affect Sudan. And that thing will have a very big impact on South Sudan.
There are more than 4 parallel peace processes for Sudan now. IGAD is leading one process. The US and Saudi Arabia are heading another one. There is also a Libyan-Turkish process and an effort led by Egypt and Chad known as Neighbors of Sudan.
We are with the resolution of the IGAD, and if the IGAD changes its position, then it will sit again and decide what to do.
Violence erupted in Sudan in April last year, and up to now there is still no clear plan to end the fighting. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development, the African Union, and the United Nations mission in South Sudan are urging members of the international community to speak with one voice, harmonize the peace processes, and find durable peace for Sudan. Patrick Oyet in Juba reporting for DD India.
The government of India has gifted 35 ambulances and 66 school buses in various districts of Nepal. The keys of the vehicles were handed over by Ambassador of India to Nepal, Naveen Srivastav, in the presence of Nepal's Finance Minister Barsha Manpun. The ambassador stated during the event that this has been one of the long-standing initiatives of the Indian government under the Nepal-India Development Partnership. Defence Research and Development Organisation of India, or DRDO, and the Indian Army conducted successful trials of the indigenous man-portable anti-tank guided missile weapon system. It was field evaluated in different flight configurations with the objective of proving the technology with high superiority. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh complimented the DRDO and Indian Army for the successful trials of the system, terming it was an important step towards achieving self-reliance in advanced technology-based defence system development. Well, two-time champion Stefanos Tsitsipas will take on Norwegian Casper Ruud in the finals of the Monte-Carlo Masters on Sunday. Earlier on Saturday, Tsitsipas stunned second seed Jannik Sinner 6-4, 3-6, 6-4 to advance to the finals. The 25-year-old Greek, who won the title in 2021 and 2022, kept his cool after a near-flawless display in the opening set to stop Sinner from producing a stirring comeback. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of DD India Live. That's it we have for you, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India.